Welcome you all to this meeting of the Licensing Committee. Excuse me. This meeting is being live streamed. Should we lose the connection, we will pause the meeting until the connection is re-established. Thank you very much. Now, do we have any apologies and substitutions?
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from councillors Mark Inskip.
Just on time.
And apologies from Councillor Christine Ambrose-Smith, who is substituted by Councillor Bill Hunt.
Thank you. And we have... Carry on, John.
Yeah, Councillor Charlotte Kane is being substituted by Patricia
Caroline. Nice to see you. Thank you, Caroline. Do we have any declarations of interest? Many members? And are we happy for me to sign the minutes as a correct record of the meeting held on the 8th of April after the meeting? I will do that. Thank you very much. I have no chairman's announcements, so I will now hand over for agenda item number 5, the Gambling Act 2005, the policy consultation. I'll hand over to you, Stuart. Thank you.
Sorry, that's great. It's working. Okay, so this item is to approve the draft revised version of the Council's Gambling Act 2005 Statement of Principles for Licensing. So by way of background to this, Section 349 of the Gambling Act 2005, the licensing authorities are required to prepare a statement of principles they propose to apply when exercising functions under the Gambling Act 2005. It must be published before it comes into effect and remains in force for a period of 3 years. Now, there's a set sort of statutory process that you have to go through in order to review it. And that has to be done, as I say, every 3 years, although revisions can be made if necessary during the 3-year period as well. Before any revision can be made, a formal consultation must take place. It's laid out clearly in the Gambling Act, but effectively it runs like this, which is we sit here this morning and I present this report, and hopefully you will approve the draft revised version to go out to consultation. There is a formal public consultation which will last for 6 weeks. It then comes back to a committee, this committee, for any consultation responses to be considered. And then at that point, members will determine the wording of the policy for the coming 3 years. And then it has to go to council to be formally adopted. And then it will come into effect by the 31st of January 2025, and there is also a requirement 28 days prior to it coming into force to publish it, and we do that by publishing it on a notice board in the council reception area and in the local public library and on our website. So that's the process that goes through. The current policy or statement of principles was in force from January 2022. It's proven to be very satisfactory in guiding applicants. Gambling Act sort of work that we do here, members obviously who sit on this committee and listen to the various reports I present to you, it isn't a large area for us. You know, we're not sort of inundated with sort of like, we haven't got any coastal areas where you'd sort of normally see, you know, the gaming centres and things like that. So generally the Gambling Act for us here is betting shops, which I think we have at this point 5. And then July Racecourse, which is obviously track racing, and they have a betting licence there. So that makes the 6th one, which we have. Other than that, it's things like gaming machines in clubs and pubs, small society lotteries, which are the sort of non-commercial lotteries which schools use and PTAs use in order to sort of raise funds, you know, where you'll see the tickets go out in advance of the day of the draw, that type of thing. So we register the people for those. So it's say it's not as a substantial piece of work for our authority as it is for others. But needless to say, though, we still have to have this policy and statement in place to be able to function within the Gambling Act. So it is an important process that we go through as well every 3 years. So, let's say the current policy was when it came in January 2022. It did reflect changes that had been happened in what was then the newly published 5th edition of the Gambling Commission's guidance to local authorities, because with Gambling Act work, we have the Gambling Commission sits above us. So the Gambling Commission issues operator licenses to people like Ladbrokes, William Hill, people like that, Bet365, etc., all these sorts of places. We're only involved in premises licensing, which are like, as I said, aforementioned kind of betting shops, etc., and all the permits, which are your gaming machines and those sorts of things. So the Gambling Commission publish a guidance document, a statutory guidance document for us. In 2022, there were some, quite considerable changes. We incorporated all those changes in 2022, but since then, there hasn't really been any major changes. But what members will note in paragraph 3.7 of my report is last year, the government produced a 268-page white paper outlining proposals to improve gambling controls in the UK. Now, at the moment, that is a white paper. It hasn't sort of morphed into legislation yet. Paragraph 3.8 is for information purposes only. It just sort of sets out the main parts of that white paper and measures that they're looking to bring in controls. I wasn't intending to go through them because at this point in time, I say they're just for information. They're obviously there in the report for every member to see. And should some of these issues come to pass in the future, then obviously I will report fully as and when that occurs. Okay, so conclusions. Section 349 of the Gambling Act, like I say, requires us to prepare this. As I've already set out, there is this process to go through. Appendix 1 to the report shows the new document, and effectively the changes to that document are just to reflect things like the population of the district, which is mentioned within the statement of principles, is obviously increased, it's changed, and other references to dates. And also, there are you'll notice a lot of sort of small typo changes, but they're for accessibility. With obviously the council's drive to make sure all documents are as accessible as possible. Capitalisation and things like that have been removed because it seemed a prudent time to do that. So the conclusion is essentially that the document has been prepared in line with the process. And it's for members now to instruct me as to whether you're happy for that to go out to consultation as contained in Appendix 1.
Thank you, Stuart. Does anybody have any questions for Stuart about this? Fire away, Alison.
Just a quick question on page 24 of the agenda pack, which is agenda item 5, Appendix 1, and where you're talking about the population, the track changes version seems to say the population is 874,700. It's just a minor point, but I just thought we probably need to correct that.
I'll make sure that's corrected when the track changes are removed, but I think originally was 74%.
I'm going to say it's
Yes.
No, we've had a lot of growth, but I didn't know it was that much. That's extraordinary. John.
Being very picky, the capitalization, the sometimes council is in lowercase to start with. Sometimes it's in uppercase. There's also a lot of other things like that throughout. District maybe should be capitalized when it means the district. Yeah, and things, and there is inconsistencies with the capitalization throughout. And the other one, which actually I was debating about this myself, is is premises a singular or plural?
John, not a spelling committee. But if anybody has any words of wisdom on that, anybody,
I mean, it says the premises is somewhere down the line, which should be the premises are. But I
Ooh.
mean, but premises seems to be actually a group name. So I think one ought to ponder on this.
It's Larry, it wasn't working a minute ago. You're correct, Councillor. There are strange things within licensing where under the Licensing Act 2003, it will be a premises license, which is with an S on it. And obviously, normally when we're talking about things, you'd say a premise would be without an S. I'm unfortunately not sort of educated to the point of grammar and spelling as yourself. But you know, in my career, it has always generally been referred to as premises with the S on in licensing terms. I can only say that.
I've just Googled.
Yeah, as singular. Yeah.
Well done. It says it is always plural, and so as such, you will never see it in singular form.
Yeah.
there you go.
That's
Yeah.
premises with an
I say I've never seen it in singular form. It has always been referred to with the S on it. But yeah, but we've now got it.
My thing was, should it be the premises are in various locations, or it's a singular, so
It's a
premises.
singular,
okay,
yeah.
Premises,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, but in answer, Councillor, to your other point about the consistency of capitalisation, I will cast one further eye across the whole document to ensure that any inconsistencies there are removed as well.
I can give you these. I've marked up some of them.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Corrected or sit corrected. Gareth,
Thank you. The main differences seem to be changing from uppercase down to lowercase. I couldn't quite see a good reason for doing it, but yeah, I thought uppercase was perfectly readable. So.
The accessibility is something you know that is new. Again, throughout my career in licensing, you know, most of the documents we come to when you're using headings, it would be capitalized. You know, certain sort of language as such within can become jargonized as such, or you know, and it would be capitalized. Now, you know, the one thing that we have all as officers been receiving training on is obviously the fact that you know that isn't overly helpful to some certain sort of areas of society that we have dealings with. And so we're moving all of our documentation to sentence case and removing certain sort of banners and things like that we felt were helpful and look professional, but actually, you know, we're being advised are not helpful to certain areas, as I say, of the community that we have dealings with. So you know, we have gone through this and before this goes out and gets published as such, it will have a further eye cast over it by our reprographics team, you know, who tend to lead on the accessibility side. Just as a side note, it's not to do with this item, but we're at the moment looking at our taxi plate, the fonts and everything used on our taxi plates because of this exact reason as well. So,
does anybody have anything else they would like to speak to? Ask Stuart. In which case, then I'm quite happy to move to the debate, or are we quite happy to say to Stuart, yes, please go ahead and put this out for consultation from the 6th of July until mid-August, and then he'll come back to us in September. Happy with that? Yes, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. In which case then Stuart will move seamlessly on to agenda item number 6, which is the Business and Planning Act Pavement Licensing Policy Update.
okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, so this item is to note the amendments made under delegated authority to the pavement licensing policy in order to reflect the new permanent pavement licensing scheme introduced by the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023, and to note the level of fees set under delegated powers. So the background to this, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the government introduced a temporary pavement licensing scheme via the Business and Planning Act 2020 to be administered and enforced by district and borough councils. In 2023, the government made the scheme permanent via the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023. However, the new permanent scheme required secondary legislation in order to come into force. There was slight delays with that coming into force, but it did take effect on the 1st of April 2024. Now, due to the delays and the very tight time frame, it was necessary to use delegated authority to ensure that officers could continue to accept and process applications, maintain the licenses and enforce when necessary, because we just wouldn't have had time to get to be here in front of you guys. So the constitutional aspect of this requires us to report back at the next available committee, which is the purpose of this report today. So the new scheme largely reflects the temporary scheme with the following amendments. I have spoken about this at other committees, so I don't think anything's going to come of any surprise, but the consultation period has been increased from 7 to 14 days, and the determination period has also been increased from 7 to 14 days. Fees have been increased to statutory maximum caps of 500 for new applications and 350 for renewals. The previous temporary scheme was £100 for all. But the licenses under the temporary scheme had a key renewal of the 30th of September. So they only lasted from whenever you were issued, they all ran out on the 30th of September the following year. The new licenses last for 2 years, and they run for 2 years from the point that you are issued the license. So it's removed that key renewal month in that way. Obviously, the factor in there is that the 350 equates to approximately 175, obviously, then per year. New enforcement powers were introduced to allow a district council to remove unauthorised furniture and charge for the storage of such furniture and the disposal of. So there's additional powers, whereas under the temporary scheme, whilst we were giving out licenses to people, issues of enforcing and removing unauthorised furniture remained a county function, but that's now come to us. So we've got a bit more power available to us now as well. And we've also got better powers to vary and revoke permissions for breaching conditions. So if somebody obtains a license and doesn't do what they say they're going to do, we've got better powers to take permissions away from them. Officers mentioned about the fees in the November 2023 fees report, because we knew they were coming in, we knew what those statutory caps were going to be, and at that point it was sort of agreed that they would be incorporated into our fees and charges schedule. And as I say, they are set at 500 for the new and 350 for renewals. And that was done purely because previous work that we always do on our fees had shown that the £100 cap set under the temporary scheme was not sufficient to cover the cost of administering and enforcing the regulations. I can go into a bit more depth in paragraph 3.3, where say we looked at this 2-year license as opposed to the 1-year temporary scheme. The costs of administering, maintaining throughout the extended 2-year period. The maintenance element takes into account time spent on inquiries, complaints, visits, etc., as well as helping to cover other departmental overheads that all licence holders contribute towards. And as it says, it's estimated at this time a true 2-year cost recovery figure will be in the region of other 2-year charges that we currently levy, which would be around probably 642 for a new, 598 for renewal, which is why I'm satisfied.
Amen.
I didn't think my report was that bad.
Ghost has left the building.
So as you can see from paragraph 4.3, you know, those figures that we've worked out mean that the statutory maximums are still under what our true cost recovery would be, which is why it's justifiable to charge the maximum cap rather than a reduced figure at this point in time. A full evaluation of licensing fees occurs every year in September or October. That will be obviously brought by myself, and this new permanent scheme will be reflected in that report in say September or October this year. We currently have 16 pavement licenses that we maintain, and we've issued 2 under the new scheme, just for information purposes there. So as I say, this is just really a noting of, because the action to actually make the changes has happened. But if members have any questions of me, then obviously I'm available to answer.
Stuart, thank you, Stuart. Any questions for Stuart on this? It's Gareth.
Does it include the sort of tables and chairs in the market on market days? Is it missing, or is that part of the market?
Okay, pavement licenses cover the use of temporary furniture on the highway that's connected to a principal business that is food led. You know, now that could be a supermarket, or it can be a restaurant, and predominantly you'll see, like, you know, Piccolo Lounge and is one, Costa's another, you know, so you can have like a lounge bar, alcohol venue that has seating outside. You can have a sandwich shop that has seating outside, like we have down in the marketplace. And if there was to be a trader in the market area that was there and was having furniture on the highway, then arguably yes, that would fall within the scope of a pavement license. You know, we work closely with markets. You know, wouldn't cover the market stalls because the markets are all sort of kind of enshrined in their own protected bubble. You know, we don't cover markets, for instance, with street trading permissions, because markets are an exemption to street trading. And with these pavement side of things, there could be an argument that if the principal trader is a food trader and they have got chairs and tables outside, and it's classed to be what is considered to be a highway, a public highway, then they would, you know, certainly be questioned and looked into to see whether they fall within the definition. But there's a good possibility they would do.
And do all these things actually occur in Ely? Are there any outside Ely?
We have a couple of pavement licenses in Soham. I think we also have possibly 1 or 2 in Littleport. So we now have, with these 2 new ones, we have 18 in total. Yes, the bulk are in Ely Centra. We've got them from Cafe Nero's, you know, some of the small independent traders, as I say, Piccolo Lounge I've already mentioned, Costa, the Fish House, you know, the fish and chip shop on Marketplace there. So we've got a number in the centre. And then, as I say, we have got certainly, I think, 2 off the top of my head in Soham, and I think 1, possibly 2 in Littleport. You know, but we remain engaged with people, you know, should they wish to sort of, you know, obviously find out whether they can have them, and then we'll help them and assist them to obtain those licenses.
Thank you very much. So just to clear it up, the fees will be 642 and 598? No.
No, Councillor, sorry if I'm confused.
Yeah.
No, so there is a statutory maximum cap in the legislation that only permits us to charge 500 for new,
Okay.
and 350 for renewals. But the reason that I put those figures you just mentioned in there is because what we did in order to sort of justify charging those maximums, because we could charge nothing and we could charge 500. So it's a sliding scale, and you have to always be cost recovery. So I had to do a quick calculation to look at, over a 2-year period for a pavement license, you know, what is the kind of true cost recovery cost to the council. And that was that figure of the 600, 682 figure. You know, and the 598 figure, 642 and 598 figures. So it was really there for illustration to say that we are doing things right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Christine?
I'll happy to be Christine, I don't know. Yeah, my question's similar in a way, because you talk about the cost spent on it, and you include things like the inquiries and all the rest, and you talk about complaints. And I just wondered, for a point of information only, really, there's always complaints, there's always admin issues, there's always stuff to happen, but I just wondered, were there any issues and things that crop up with these sort of things? Were there things that we might want to look at as a problem or an issue, or were there certain things that people always complained about, or was it just normal sort of admin type stuff?
It's predominantly administration, but on renewals, on new applications, the two new applications we had since April involved site visits, and there were a number of complaints, objections, because there's a consultation period for 2 weeks, and in that consultation period, you know, on one we received, I think it was about 16 objections. You know, so we have to, obviously there's officer time involved in going through those. On that occasion myself.
Objections by the customers or the clients of the person asking for the license, or the license.
Okay, so representations can come in both in support and in objection. On this particular, on this main case we were dealing with, one person supported and about 16 opposed. And obviously then we have to conduct a site visit. We have to assess and talk with the statutory consultees, which are highways and the police. And we then have to arrive at a decision. So
Going to say that some of the people putting in objections are local people who live near to that premises, and then they're just concerned about the potential, the possibility of nuisance, or, you know, and that we can address during that process, which Stuart does.
Yeah, so again, you know, we have the power to vary the application. So if somebody applies to have, I don't know, a dozen tables and chairs outside, the result of the application may be that it's limited to 2 or 3 tables and chairs. There are national conditions that have to be taken into account, which is for non-smoking areas provided, and also accessibility, so the pavement isn't obstructed. So what you'll notice is with the pavement licenses, most of them, certainly the larger ones, have barriers, fabric barriers to the extreme left and right. Obviously, so people who have got partial sighted, you know, will obviously not. They'll see a barrier more than they'll see an odd chair or a table. That's the way the tables and chairs are laid out has to be according to the plan that's been submitted. What you tend to find with these pavement licenses is they get moved by customers and they start expanding beyond the limits that they're permitted to. So there is always ongoing. I use the term loosely, complaints. They're people who would sort of, you know, contact us and say, you know, this venue's pavement the chairs are going across the pavement too much, so I can't get by. And then we will go and we will deal with the license holders on that. So throughout the 2-year period, it isn't just a case of setting them up and then they do what they want to do for 2 years. You know, they're quite involved, but overall the level of complaints is low.
Right, that's okay.
Yeah.
I do understand all that you've said. Obviously, I understand all of that. And you can't really recover that on a client by client basis. It all has that cost, just has to go into one big pot and then is averaged out as you've done on the fees thingy. I just wondered if there were any particular issue that we could highlight to see or if it were something that you could do on a client by client basis, or, you know, the other ways of recovering the cost, or are there ways where, you know, some of those costs, those complaints are frivolous, in which case, you know, they're wasting the council's time sometimes. It was that sort of inquiry, really.
My honest sort of feelings on it is it's an impossibility to separate down things to an individual, and sometimes, like you say, you know, we do get frivolous you know, complaints, vexatious complaints, and we have to filter through those. Every year we assess where our time is spent, and we look at taxes, we look at alcohol, gambling, etc. And when I come back here and do, but to say you know, that somebody should pay more because they've got particularly you know, sensitive neighbours, let's say, to somewhere else which is in the middle of nowhere with no sensitive neighbours, you know, would be almost unfair and discriminatory in itself. So we do have a degree of across the board levelling it out as best we can in that way.
Does anybody have any other questions for Stuart? In which case then, are we happy to note the changes, committee? Yes, I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And we now then move on to your update, Stuart.
You'll be glad to know this one's going to be short as well. Really, things to report back is that since we were last here, we've concluded all of our court cases that were outstanding at that time. Bar one has arguably got a right to appeal at this point in time. Whether they choose to or not, we don't know. But members will have heard me talk about the animal welfare prosecution that we took on. That was two years ago now, almost. It's really pleased actually to sort of report back that that individual they pleaded guilty, and at sentencing they were given a suspended prison sentence of 6 months for the Section 4 offence, 2 months for Section 9, and 2 months for the Section 13 illegal breeding charges to run concurrently. They were also given community service hours that had to be fulfilled. I can't, off the top of my head, remember. Was it two? I think it was about 200 hours. It was 200 hours is, I believe, the number of hours that she got, and also a number of rehabilitation sessions that were compulsory, and a £5,000 contribution towards the costs of you know, that were incurred by the council. It was, as I say, the prison side of things was suspended for 18 months, but the judge was very much of the opinion that well, the starting point was prison, and she was incredibly lucky not to go to prison. So I think we found, from a legal point of view and for the council, you know, that it was a really positive outcome, which was, again, it's fine to be talking about it here because it's been put into the papers, it's been published, and you may well have seen articles on it. But it was a massive team effort from the council and outside agencies and partners, vets, the housing areas where we obviously had them housed and things like that. So, you know, a really good sort of pat on the back for everybody on that one. We had I think I've reported this, but I'll just double, might as well say it twice for not at all. We refused a driver, and that gentleman appealed, and we were successful in defending that appeal. That was a refusal on the grounds of not being fit and proper due to inappropriate sort of sexual conversation and behaviour of that nature. So we were successful there, and we just defended an appeal by a driver who was revoked by our non-statutory subcommittee, and the magistrates upheld that decision as well. So that appeal was dismissed. So we've been very, you know, very sort of successful, and again shows that the policies we have are robust. it's also been reported that in a legal journal that it was done on hearsay evidence, which is not always the best sort of evidence, people would say, but it is proven that it is strong enough to ensure that our local residents are safe from people who shouldn't be in particular roles. So you know, that's good. I've talked before about an expansion of a taxi company wishing to expand. That is still going on. There have been a slight delay, not on our side, it has to be said, it's on their side. But as of a week ago Friday, so they have confirmed that they are pushing ahead. And so we will see larger numbers of taxis coming. They won't be operating in our area because this is private hire, special restricted sort of private hire, public special education need contract type work. But they will be using us as their licensing authority for their larger fleet. They've been using us for one of their regions. They're expanding to use us for all 5. So there'll be more information come to members there in the future. Really numbers wise, say everything is moving in the right direction. We won't, if Chair, you're happy, we won't be having July's meeting. Again, it is quite a busy month, obviously, with a general election for democratic services, etc. And there isn't anything that needs to come to committee in July. Obviously, August we don't have, and then the next time that I'll be bringing a report will be the gambling policy and the fees, which will be in September. But unless members have any questions of me about the general service that's being run at the moment, I don't have anything really more to say.
That's fine. Anything else for Stuart? I'd just like, I think on behalf of the whole committee, to pass our thanks on to your team and to the legal team for successfully defending our subcommittee decisions and for following through with that terrible animal cruelty case, which was just awful. And if any members aren't aware, then Stuart will talk to you about it afterwards, about what was uncovered in that lady's house and the terrible cruelty that the animals had suffered at her hands. But I think unless anybody has anything else to say, at 10:37, I will, oh, sorry.
Apologies, Stuart just referenced the July and August
Yes.
meetings. Would you be happy?
Absolutely happy to cancel unless anybody has any objections. No, happy to cancel those, and we'll meet again then on the 11th of September. And we'll go through the fees and the Gambling Act responses. In which case then at 10:37, I will bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much indeed.